Let's talk about Poe's The Black Cat, which is actually a pretty twisted story, and that's saying something for Edgar Allan Poe's story anyway. I find that just the outlook on the nature of humanity is especially dark in this story. But let's go through some of the main details, see if we can understand what's going on a little better in this dark story. Notice that at the beginning of the story, we do get a sense of the narrator's personality. Now, we are given this story by a narrator that we could argue could be a little bit of an unreliable narrator. Poe likes to use those unreliable narrators anyway, so it shouldn't really come as a surprise if we have another unreliable narrator here. I don't necessarily know if he shows the same type of murderous insanity that some of his other narrators show. But this narrator does kind of, at the drop of a hat, murder his wife with an axe, really for no apparent reason than she just tries to stop him from killing Pluto too. But we'll come back to that. We do have a narrator here who's telling us the events. We're at the mercy of the narrator to tell us a story. And notice that he does kind of have he blames his degradation on the fiend intemperance. And basically, he looks at the man he was and the man he is, and he sees that these two things don't match up, that he's actually not happy with his current status, that he's not happy with his current character. He says that my general temperament of character, through the instrumentality of the fiend intemperance, had, I blush to confess it, experienced a radical alteration for the worse. And he follows this with talking about things like he uses bad language to his wife, and also he uses physical brutality to his wife, and of course to the animals as well. Um, so it's interesting here that we have the narrator who seems aware that he is not the best guy, but he also has an explanation for why. And he blames it on, of course, alcoholism, on intemperance. Um, it's interesting because whenever you read Poe, if you read Poe's biography, it's hard not to bring in the author's biography with elements of what you read in the story and what our narrators tell us in a lot of Poe's stories. And this is one detail that I can't help but connect, and it's not right to do so, but I can't help but connect kind of this self loathing and kind of this hatred towards alcoholism, but still he's still chooses to drink, even though he seems aware that it doesn't make him a very nice person. I think that may be a sentiment that Poe himself could also sympathize with. So let's talk about Pluto and possible symbolism that Pluto may show here. Notice that we have a target for the violence the narrator commits on Pluto. The target is the eye. He cuts out the eye of Pluto. And this is a symbolic act. It's something that we've seen in other of Poe's stories, such as The Telltale Heart, where the eye is seen as something that is evil to the narrator. It produces a great deal of stress. Specifically, it may be a guilt. And so here I think we do have the eye of Pluto. Reminds our narrator of what he already knows, that he's not the man that he was, that he is in a spiral of decline. And just cats can't talk or anything, but just the act of Pluto seeming to kind of shirk away from the narrator when the narrator tries to pet him, he feels judged by that, and so he chooses to symbolically castrate that ability to judge by cutting out Pluto's eye. This is before, of course, he also chooses to hang Pluto by the neck in just this really sick display. Look at the name Pluto. Pluto would be the name for the Roman god of death. So I wonder, we've talked in this class before about reapers and grim reapers. If we look at Pluto and the function of Pluto too, specifically. I wonder if we have a reaper here, if we have a symbolic reaper, especially when we have the end of the story that the voice of Pluto too, coming from the entombed wall, is what ultimately kind of dooms our narrator to the gallows, which we do have foreshadowed because when Pluto 2 shows up, the narrator says that there's a white spot. That's the only difference between Pluto 1 and Pluto 2. That's not really the cat's name. That's just what I call it. I don't think we got a name for the second cat. So Pluto 2 works for the purpose of this video. When Pluto 2 shows up, the only difference between him and the first Pluto that was killed by our narrator is the white spot. And at first, that white spot isn't really given a clear definition of what it looks like. It's only until later on in the story that the narrator seems to remark that the mark on the beast is actually in the shape of a hangman's gallows, which is where he's going to end up because, as he's telling this story, we know this is a confession before his execution, that he will be put to death for the crime of murdering his wife, and that, this is definitely foreshadowed. It may be, a mark of divine vengeance. We do have that kind of cool fire scene where when he kills Pluto, there's that mysterious fire that burns everything to the ground, and he loses all his wealth. And there's also that kind of the plaster cast left behind of Pluto's body where it wasn't, and he assumes somebody just threw the body in the room to wake him up for the fire. But we do have kind of some elements of supernatural that do indicate that there is judgment going on, judgment against the narrator for his depravity. And let's talk about this depravity, because this has, to me, one of the darkest explorations of why people commit evil. And that's kind of what we're talking about this week, evil. And a lot of people, when they read this story, evil may not be the first thing that jumps to mind. I do think it has just a wicked analysis of why people commit evil actions. And it's when the narrator talks about why he killed Pluto. This is something I do believe the narrator at one time did genuinely love Pluto, just as he may have. I don't know if he loved his wife or not. He seemed to indicate that they got along because of a shared love for animals, right? So I do think that if you had this man who we know Pluto is his favorite cat, and his favorite animal. I mean, he's an animal lover, apparently, although his actions do challenge that. But he does say he loves animals. Pluto is his favorite animal, and he kills Pluto after wounding him severely. Why does he do it? We have this passage that, although it was written a long time ago, I wonder if it's still not part of our human nature as far as explaining why do we do the things that we do when we know better, when we don't want to, our hearts tell us no, but we proceed anyway. And it's the line starting here. Who has not 100 times found himself committing a vile or a silly action for no other reason than because he knows he should not? Have we not a perpetual inclination, in the teeth of our best judgment, to violate that which is law, merely because we understand it to be such? This spirit of perverseness, I say, came to my final overthrow. It was this unfathomable longing of the soul to vex itself, to offer violence to its own nature, to do wrong for the wrong's sake only, that urged me to continue and finally to consummate the injury I'd inflicted upon the unoffending brute. One morning in cool blood, I slipped a noose about the neck and hung it to the limb of a tree, hung it with the tears streaming from my eyes, and with the bitterest remorse at my heart, hung it because I knew that it had loved me, and because it felt it had given me no reason of offense, hung it because I knew that in doing so I was committing a sin, a deadly sin that would so jeopardize my immortal soul as to place it, if such a thing were possible, even beyond the reach of the infinite mercy of the most merciful and most terrible God. What a line! I mean, just a terrible speech here as to why he does this. Let's unpack it a little bit. So Notice he says he does this in cool blood, meaning this is not really an act of passion where he just loses it. This is something that he calmly carries out. I don't want to say without emotion because he does have emotion. He's got tears streaming from his face while he does this. Just terrible image of him hanging this cat that he loves. But why is he doing it? It's a Our narrator here arguably commits suicide anyway, because we'll get to the line where he basically confesses. He could have gotten away with it if he'd had kept his mouth shut, but he's not able to. So you can argue that the narrator here literally commits suicide, but here he spiritually tries to commit suicide as well, more than just killing the body, but killing the soul. Uh, you know, Damning himself to hell, basically removing himself from the grace of God because of just the innocence of the victim that he does this to. That the victim, Pluto, did nothing to deserve this. So this is something that the narrator can do. The expression is we are our own worst enemy, and the narrator here definitely seems to justify this, that his own self-loathing and self-hatred and feelings of inadequacy. He feels like he doesn't deserve love. And I mean, pets give you love. That's what pets do. They ask for very little in return. Pluto here, because of what he is, a pet, and showing the affection that it does, causes him to be the perfect target for the narrator here in trying to spiritually kill himself. It's interesting that when Pluto 2 comes, Pluto 2 demonstrates another nice little cliche that you can kill someone with kindness, because that's exactly what Pluto 2 does. Pluto 2, first, it really doesn't bother the narrator at all that Pluto 2 takes to him and rubs against him, and the narrator kind of pets him a little bit to entice him to come home. But then we find quickly that the narrator grows more than just disturbed, grows disgusted with the affection that Pluto 2, who is basically the same as the Pluto 1 that he had killed, shows to him. He says, "For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the reverse of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was. Its evident fondness for myself rather disgusted and annoyed. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame, and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty, preventing me from physically abusing it." So here it's very interesting that Pluto 2 uses kind of this haunting punishment, but the haunting punishment is done not through violence, not through anger, but Pluto's kindness that he shows to the narrator is kind of what twists that knife in his soul because of the guilt that it provokes. And just the self-loathing that we know he has, that it continues to spark. And so we do have that the narrator shows self-destruction in confessing to his crime of, and think of how ridiculous it is. This is another show of our unreliable narrator. The narrator gives very little, if any, explanation for why he chooses to kill his wife. It's just like she's in the way, and so he buries the axe in her head. That's just ridiculous. But he does not dwell on that detail because, for him at least, it's not an important detail. This isn't the story of why he killed his wife, which would be really what anybody would want to hear. This is the story of why he is a victim of the fiend intemperance and, basically his relationship with Pluto 1 and 2. His wife is not even a minor character. She's just kind of auxiliary. She's a victim, but not even worthy of really a motivation of why he did it. He does tell on himself. I mean, he could have got away with it, and this could be defined as hubris. And hubris is going to be that excessive pride that leads to someone's downfall. But the investigators are there. He's done his job of entombing with the brick wall, which is another Poe, kind of drinking game every time you have an entombed body, take a shot if you're 21 or above, right? But we're not surprised that we have a narrator here who's secretly concealed a body. And it's also not surprising that he tells on himself, because Poe narrators tend to do that. But notice his confession here. He really has to rush to tell on himself because the inspectors are leaving. He says, "Gentlemen, I delight to have allayed your suspicions. I wish you all the health and a little more courtesy. By the by, gentlemen, this is a very well-constructed house." Notice what he says. "And the rabid desire to say something easily. I scarcely knew what I uttered at all." Uh, I find as a teacher that this is a good tactic, that silence sometimes, if I have suspicion of a student who may be engaging in academically dishonest activity, that sometimes letting that student talk will show what Poe shows us here, what our narrator shows us here, that letting someone talk can, well, I hate to use this pun, but they'll give themselves enough rope to hang by, as our narrator here literally does. He just keeps talking. "I may say, an excellently well-constructed house. These walls," are you going, gentlemen? He's stopping them again. "These walls are solidly put together," and then he knocks, and we know what happens after he knocks. The cat answers from within, and they tear down the wall. And his crime is exposed to all. So it's a dark story. I'm surprised it's not one of his. I mean, it's a famous story of Poe, but I don't think it's one of the most famous works of Poe. I find it to be just, if you consider terror being just an examination of the darkness of the human soul, I think this story does it a lot better than many others, if any others, that I can think of. So I hope you enjoy it. And if you've got a kitty or any pet at all, cuddle them a little bit, cuddle them a little bit, and give them an extra scoop of food or a treat, and shake off the darkness that this may have left on you. So hope you enjoyed this video. Bye bye.